Hello and welcome to the series where I show you what I'm doing to become a web developer. This week has mostly been about creative CSS, so background images, linear gradients, shapes, animations, along with a review of CSS grid and media queries. Let's dive into how much time I've spent on web development this week. So in total I've spent 26 hours and 44 minutes, and that's broken up into 11 hours 56 for tutorials and 14 hours 48 for projects. I think that's a really good amount of time that I've spent this week on web development. Not too much and not too little, so just perfect, like Goldilocks maybe. In terms of my resources, I've used a lot more of Skillshare this week, but I have used a few YouTube videos. But my problem with using YouTube sometimes is I do get very easily distracted, and because of that I think some of my tutorial time may be inflated. I just need to be a little bit more disciplined, I guess. Stop clicking on all those nice looking videos on the side. So what I've learned this week, like I was saying, mostly creative CSS stuff. I think it's amazing what some people can do with just CSS. Done a lot of basic kind of hover effects, transitions, a little bit of keyframe animations, which I've found fairly intuitive. It's just making it look nice is a little difficult. Similarly with shapes, I just need a little bit more practice. I might look into sites like, is it CSS Wars or CSS Battles? Something like that, where you try to replicate a shape with as little CSS as possible. I think that'll be a really good challenge, or I could just find images that I want to replicate. But it's just time and effort. In terms of the grid stuff, that was really good. A good review of it all. What was quite interesting was grid areas. I've never really used them before and they look quite powerful, so I'll be implementing them a lot more in the future. Similarly with creating either columns or rows where you do a repeat, using auto fit with min max to help with responsive sites, so I think that's really cool as well. One thing that didn't go so well is I wanted to look at the kind of wave animations or wave patterns where you divide sections with it. A lot of the videos I watched use SVGs. There's nothing wrong with that, it's just I've never really used SVGs before, so I didn't get that much out of watching the wave tutorials. It might be something I go back to in the future when I'm a little bit more comfortable with CSS, images and everything like that. Let's jump over to the computer and see what projects I've been building this week. Okay, so I've uploaded most of my projects to GitHub. Not all of them, just a few of them. And there are a few things that I need to improve upon, we'll say. For instance, images. I downloaded images from Pixels, I think it was, and they are quite large images which cause the load time to be generally quite slow. There are also a few problems with mobile devices, and that just goes to show that I need to start building for mobile first, really. So once I got this up on GitHub, I did try it on my phone, and the background text example here doesn't actually work, so that is a bit of a pain. But we'll go through it. So first off, we have a few backgrounds. I built a Union Jack using all linear gradients and repeating linear gradients, I believe. I thought this was a really fun way to just learn how gradients work, and there are a few things which I'm not a big fan of. You know, on the actual Union Jack, these diagonal red lines are kind of offset, so I think one should be along the bottom and one's along the top. I'm not too sure how to do that with linear gradients, but I was quite happy with that. Similarly, I've got the German flag. This was very basic. Again, just repeating, no, not repeating, just linear gradients. It was quite nice. I watched a video on background images from YouTube, and there were some really cool ideas. One of them was a grid pattern with an image in the background, so it looked like part of the images was missing. I haven't actually uploaded that to GitHub for some reason, but the other example, which I thought was really cool, was to have the image coming through the text. Like I said, this doesn't really work on mobile, unfortunately. On my mobile, the text just doesn't appear because the text has to be transparent, and I don't think the image loads properly, so there's just like this green screen, which is a bit of a pain, and then obviously font size isn't brilliant. The media screen was just like a general kind of, this is what happens on large screens. I've got a mobile version, and when I make it bigger it goes tablet, and then small screens, and then large screens. So that was just a way to use media queries and differentiate between small screens and large screens. The card layout was pretty simple. I think this one I did start off with a mobile version, so they were all in one column. I've got a background image, a kind of transparent overlay for the main section, and then a slight animation on the boxes. I've used display flex, and that goes from 2 columns to then 3 columns for larger screens, which is quite good. Again, on mobile this is a little bit slow to load because of the background image. The portfolio, this one annoyed me slightly. It took me a long time to get this lining up a little bit nicer than it was. You know, I've got some hover effects, and I've actually got 2 images. So on a small screen I've got a smaller version of the image. Let me just shrink this all up. So yeah, I've got a smaller version of the image. The nav bar is hidden, and then if you go slightly larger, it does change. But on tablets you can tell the image is quite pixelated, so I should have probably used a 3rd image for tablets. I'm not sold on this portfolio kind of display. I think I could have done a lot better otherwise. Shapes, I'm just going to apologize now for the garish colors that I've used throughout these projects, but I wanted to just play around with shapes, doing different methods. On the right hand side I've got clip path, and on the left hand side I've used other methods, you know, border radius, transform, borders themselves, and before after pseudo elements. I actually think the left hand side was a lot harder than the right, so I'll be using clip path a lot more in the future. There are a few instances where I haven't been able to make them match. This, I really struggled with creating this star. I don't know why. Just, yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare. But the clip path one is quite nice. And then I've got a hero kind of image with a slanting border. Again, this uses clip path, and it uses a calc. So I think it's like the height minus 10 view height. So that's pretty good. And then I had to offset this second div by 10 view height. So I was quite happy just playing around with all those shapes. Similarly, I've got the animation page where I've just put in a bunch of animations which I thought were pretty nice. A lot of these top ones are just hover effects, so you've got your scale, your rotations, some kind of translations, backgrounds sliding in, which is quite nice, a box shadow, a border radius. I really like that border radius, I don't know why, I just thought it looked really nice. Ooh, the image isn't working here. There should be another image of clouds obviously behind this, so I'll have to look into that one. And this slide in, slide out, which is quite nice. Then I've got the keyframes at the bottom. I will admit, the wiggle effect I struggled with a lot. I knew what I wanted to do, but I couldn't make it look quite right, so I went on to Stack Overflow for some hints and tips on that one, and I found a really nice, someone had posted a really nice way to do the wiggle. Colors, pretty simple, and movement was pretty simple as well. But I just had a lot of fun again, just doing a lot of animations. If you've watched week 1 of my web dev journey, you'll remember kind of the holy grail from a Flexbox point of view. I've just recreated this using grid, and I've used grid template areas, you know, header, footer, main, and aside right and aside left. So I thought that was pretty cool. And again, media queries just to redo that. Where am I going? I've got an image gallery, again, really slow load because of the big images, but there's like a box shadow, apologies. There's a box shadow going around the images to give them a bit of a depth to them, and then I change the color on hover. But again, display grid, so I've got, I think it's a 5x5 grid. This takes up, no, it's a 5x3 grid, and this first image takes up 2 columns and 2 rows. You know, you got 1 and 1, 2 and 2 again, and then 1 by 1, 2 by 1, 1 by 1, 1 by 1. So I thought that was quite nice, and that shows a really good example of grid template areas. You know, you can do any kind of shapes you want. And finally, the front end mentor challenge. This one was a lot easier than the previous weeks, but there's a few points I'm not entirely sure of. So I started off with a mobile design, and yeah, I thought this looked quite nice. You know, you got the hover effects working nicely. Probably a bit of issue with spacing here, but when I went to larger screens, I increased the font size. I think it was to 18 or 22 pixels. And this is where I get a bit confused with this style guide. It says to use 15 pixels. I don't know if that's 15 pixels just for mobile or 15 pixels no matter what device is being used. I need to stop touching my coffee during recording because of the sounds with my ring. But yeah, I was a lot happier with this one. I think I used a display flex to change between the, you know, row and column layouts. There's the icons and hovers, but yeah, I'm generally quite happy with that layout. Those are the ones I've uploaded. Like I say, I've got a few more that I have done, which I haven't actually uploaded to GitHub. But I'll look to make a few changes next week on, you know, optimizing images and making sure that this background text one works. But I'll add a link to this GitHub page and my repository in the description below. And that is it for my week 2 of web development. I have felt a lot better this week. I think I've made some good progress, but there is definitely a very, very, very long way to go. Any feedback is always welcome. Please let me know. What I do feel like I need to do is plan out my projects in a little bit more detail up front and just be a little bit more descriptive with what they are. As always, if you have enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, and if you want to see more of these kind of videos, please subscribe. I will catch you all later.